Hello everyone, I'm Jeffrey Turner, aka MegaJetty1, and you can bet on that. What I want to do right now is just take a time to tell you a little bit about myself. Question is, where to begin? Right from the beginning, in the middle, near more recently? Uh, Best I can come up with is I was I don't know if I was born in, but I know I reside in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Growing up, I was a bit of a wild child. I liked to play rough. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that playing rough also could get people hurt. But I learned, you know, just because I like to play rough and some people do get hurt for it, doesn't make me a bad person. I try my best to be good as much as possible, and I do my best not to hurt anyone these days. But I know sometimes accidents do happen, and it best I can describe is when I was little. I remember the earliest I can remember is when I was little. There was these kind of flat, square-shaped scooters that kids like to play on in gym class. I was like setting them or setting up some wooden boards, whichever, and I just like threw them in the air, and because it seemed like a fun idea. I was a kid, stupid, really. I remember a little girl, getting hurt by it and crying, and I was like, I'm sorry, it was an accident. I didn't mean to hurt you, I swear. And it was the truth. But I still got in trouble, and rightfully so. It would have been unfair if I didn't get in trouble, even if it was an accident. But I felt bad. One day, my mom told me that shortly after that, there was a girl, probably the same girl, and this is like back in like preschool. Supposedly the same girl. She was playing with a toy. Some other kid, I think a boy, walked up, ripped it out of her hands, and left her crying. And according to my mom, I got up, walked over, ripped it out of his hands, and gave it right back to her. That tells me that while I am flawed, I have a good heart, and I pride myself on that. I make mistakes, I screw up, but as long as I'm not afraid to do the right thing and admit I was wrong and say I'm sorry, then I think that's a good thing. And I do remember this one memory. I don't remember the full details, but I remember this one time I think I was at someone else's home, and I think they were supposed to be babysitting me. I don't quite remember, but what I do remember is I was yelling, throwing a temper tantrum, and I think I used profanity, a lot of it. And I kind of, looking back on it, I feel bad, really. I don't think they were trying to treat me wrongly. I think I was just, going through a temper tantrum. And oftentimes I do still kind of go through that, but it's more controlled nowadays, and it's usually certain things that make me go down that road. Um, I was born November 28th, 1988. I remember that because, well, I can never forget. I'm never allowed to forget it. Funny thing though is at least every 6 years, my birthday falls on Thanksgiving, or Thanksgiving falls on my birthday. One thing I always love about that, the possibility of getting a turkey shaped cake. That sounds good. I can basically be thankful as well as celebrate my birthday. Um, I think the next one will be next year, 2019. I definitely look forward to it. I did look on the internet at this calendar, and it seems like after that, 2019, and maybe I think it's 2025 or something like that. Maybe I think after those two, I think a leap year comes along, and and I won't see another Thanksgiving on my birthday for a while yet, and which kind of bums. That, or they just haven't calculated the calendars right just yet. Bottom line, I love when Thanksgiving falls on my birthday. And I gotta say, I'm a big fan of the 80s. I love the 80s for a lot of different reasons, but the top ones I can name are it's the decade I was born in my opinion, the decade of the best movies, and in my opinion, the decade of the best music. Now, I wasn't much of a music or song listener to most throughout most of my childhood. I was just, I mean, I would mostly, if I did listen to anything, it would mostly be in movies that I grew up watching that I loved, like the Star Wars movies. Um, I loved the John Williams Orchestra. First time I heard it wasn't even in a Star Wars movie. It was in a Star Wars video game that I played because I got into the video game before I ever got into the franchise. But I also love the Terminator franchise because Terminator, I think I may have gotten into that one before I ever got into Star Wars, which is ironic because it was Star Wars that inspired the creation of Terminator in a way. Um, Basically, yeah, I saw Terminator 2 first, and then I saw the first Terminator from 1984. And that's another thing about me. When it comes to most franchises, I have a habit of seeing the second movie first, and then the first, and then every one other one after that. I saw Terminator 2 first, and then I saw the original Terminator. Uh, when my dad and I got into the Resident Evil video games, we played Resident Evil 2 first, and then played the first game. And years later, when I got into the Alien franchise, I saw Aliens by James Cameron, and then I saw the original Alien by Ridley Scott. And what else? Yeah, basically, I just see I often get into the second movie before I see the first. Weird pattern. I may not be the only one this happens to. I met at least one or two people I worked with that had the same thing going for them. But yeah, I try to get into the first installment sometimes, but sometimes the first installment pales in comparison to the second, so that's why I probably oftentimes get into the second one first. Now, because of that, I'd like to say that I love the 80s, and I think it's the best decade. A lot of things have not been the same since the 80s. And I honestly would like to see things go back to that way. But unfortunately, culture needs to progress to the point where we have to leave stuff behind and never mention it again or even try to revisit it, not realizing that if something big should happen where all this advanced technology and such or ways of doing things is, a broken thing, you need the old stuff to fall back on. But if you completely erase it from memory, then essentially you're forgetting what made you big to begin with, if that makes any sense at all. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I hope to share more about myself with all of you at any given time if you're interested. In the meantime, have a nice day. I've been Jeffrey Turner, and you can bet on that.